Thanks so much for joining us. The Massachusetts Republican Party may not be big, but it is the second major party in Massachusetts and very important to the functioning of our democracy here. And so periodically, we like to check in with the chair of the Mass GOP. She is Amy Carnevale, trying to rebuild the party these days after years of failure and mismanagement. Amy, good to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you.
So we have 9 congressional seats here in this state. How many will you be contesting as we sit here right now?
So we'll be contesting several of the congressional seats as well as the U.S. Senate seat, but really laser focused on our legislative seats in November, building upon a win that we had last year in a special election with Representative Peter Durant, who's now State Senator Peter Durant. So we're looking to add to our seats in the legislature, all the while doing what we can to support our federal candidates as well.
Is that just a question of limited resources? You got to allocate them somewhere, or you just feel like these federal offices are out of reach?
Certainly we have limited resources, so we do need to prioritize the campaigns that we're competing and supporting in. We'll support all of our campaigns with our message and our staff at the party, but in terms of resources, we do have limited resources, so we'll be focusing on a lot of the legislative seats where we have openings and we have strong candidates running.
So based on my research, correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, as we sit right now, no Republican challenger at all for Trahan in the 3rd, Auchincloss in the 4th, Clark in the 5th, Moulton in the 6th, Presley in the 7th, or Keating in the 9th. What kind of message does that send?
So presidential years are tough in Massachusetts for Republicans. And again, we're coming off an election cycle where we had losses really across the board. So as party chair, we need to make small gains and walk before we can run. So again, we'll really be focused on building on our legislative win last year in a state Senate seat. Okay. And this year we've had some wins at the municipal level this spring in municipal elections with select board seats. So we do see a trend this year, Republican trend. And again, we'll be looking at the state level, focus on building on our wins at the state level. And then 2 years from now, really more focused on the federal level.
Part of your job is to survey the scene and identify issues that you think the party should embrace that offer political potential. When you look at what's happening in our state right now, based on the press releases I get from the state party, looks like you believe that the migrant situation is a top drawer issue for Republicans.
So no question, the migrant situation and affordability in Massachusetts, and they're really interrelated. Those are the top 2 issues, and you'll continue to see the state party focused on both of those issues. We do see over $1 billion being spent towards migrants right now, and the state continues to roll out the red carpet to welcome in migrants. And at the party, we take no issue with the individual migrants. We don't fault them for wanting to better their lives, but we need to have reasonable policies in Massachusetts. And we have seen that the policies, as they're currently drafted, are not reasonable.
We have to take a break, but briefly, point me to one way in which that's being handled that Republicans would do differently.
So Republicans, time and time again, have offered residency requirements. Initially, it was to require that residents should be in Massachusetts for 1 year before being eligible automatically for housing. Then we scaled it back to 6 months and then 3 months. We've also offered requirements to prioritize veterans before migrants coming across the border, and those have been summarily rejected in the legislature.
But so when migrants come here legally because legal migrants who come here because they have some kind of connection or a relative or something, for the first year, what are they going to sleep on the street?
So, we think that the policy of kind of rolling out the red carpet is a wrong-headed policy, and we need to prioritize those residents. To the extent possible, the Commonwealth could provide limited services, but right now we're the only state in the nation that's providing the housing situation for migrants from day one when they come across the country. And at some point, we're going to see that start to impact existing programs. And as a matter of fact, we already have with some of our programs to support law enforcement, fire programs. They've had to be reduced to accommodate this migrant program.
Welcome back to our conversation with Amy Carnevale. She's chair of the Massachusetts Republican Party. So, Amy, this past week, we saw former President Trump in an interview with our sister station in Pittsburgh indicate that he's looking at access to contraception and federal policies regarding that, and might have something to say soon. Then later the same day, he basically walked that back. Politico reports that there's this think tank close to the former president that's developing a bunch of sort of what they call Christian nationalist plans for the administration if he's returned to office, spearheaded by someone named Russell Vought, who was director of the Office of Management and Budget in the Trump first term, and is being touted as a possible chief of staff in the second Trump White House. He's part of a group who have advocated for overturning same-sex marriage, ending abortion, and reducing access to contraceptives. Do you and other Massachusetts Republicans support any of that? So,
same-sex marriage has been the law of the land in Massachusetts for many years. It's well entrenched. I don't see that changing anytime soon. And here at the party, we respect the law of the land in Massachusetts, and that's, you know, that will continue to be our position. And clearly, the voters in Massachusetts, and as well as the legislature, are strongly in favor of that position. So that's something that we would respect.
What about this contraception issue? Is that something on your radar?
So that came as a surprise to me yesterday. Okay. I'm a little unclear as to what may or may not be being proposed or considered, so it's a little premature.
Well,
I think,
some states want to, yeah, you know, there's a widespread Republican opposition to the morning after pill, the self-administered abortion, essentially. But some states are talking about banning IUDs and...
Yeah, again, I don't see in Massachusetts. I think the right to contraception is well established here, and I frankly don't see that changing.
The former president also gave a long interview to Time magazine recently, in which he talked about plans for a second term should he win, including carrying out a deportation operation of more than 11 million people, building migrant detention camps, letting red states monitor women's pregnancies, firing U.S. attorneys who don't carry out his order to prosecute someone, pardoning all the January 6th convicts, etc. What did you make of that?
So, when I think about Trump presidency, I think about the economy under President Trump when he was serving 2016, 2017, 2018, and the economy was much better than what we're seeing today under Joe Biden. So that's really what I think about as a Republican, and I think many residents of Massachusetts and across the nation want to get back in a position where we can have a more robust economy, where we're developing our natural resources to bring down the cost of fuel and gasoline and have a more robust economy. So I think that's really what drives me, and I think what drives a lot of other individuals in Massachusetts to support Donald Trump in his presidency.
Well, does this give you pause?
Again, I look back on what Donald Trump achieved when he was president, and that's really what I'm looking at, and as opposed to the economy under Joe Biden. And I think that contrast is stark. And again, that's really why I support Donald Trump and his candidacy for president.
Well, we've got, what is it, about 6 months to go here?
Yes.
You want to make a prediction about how Republicans are going to do here in this state?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think Republicans are going to do incredibly well. Again, presidential election years are often very tough for Republicans, but I predict we're going to add to our seats, both in the State House and the State Senate, and build upon the gains that we made last year.
So a lot of voters going to the polls maybe to vote Democrat for president in federal office, but not at the legislative level. That's what you're looking for.
I think, again, we're looking to make gains in the legislature, and that's our priority. So,
good luck to you.
Thank you.